Welcome to our video refactoring series. I'm Rob and I'm a junior engineer at Simply Business, and this is Nitish.
Hi, I'm Nitish. I'm an engineering manager here at Simply Business.
If you've not heard of Simply Business, we are a tech firm based in London, and we also have offices in Boston and remote workers from across the globe. So I'll pass it over to Nitish, and if you could give us a quick insight in what to expect with this video series.
Sure, Rob. So in this video series, what we're going to do is look at ways to evolve an existing code base using some really simple rules for design and as well as simple techniques for refactoring, taking tiny steps to improve the shape of the code, to improve the design, as well as your own understanding of the code base.
All right, welcome to the second episode of our refactoring series. This is Rob and Nitish.
Hi, it's Nitish here.
So we're going to be jumping back into the code where we left off. Just as a reminder, we will be refactoring using Kent Beck's 4 rules of simple design as a bit of a guiding principle, although we will try to make any refactors where we think there will be benefits from doing so. And we're using the open source project. Remind me of the name of it, Nitish?
Gobi.
Gobi, okay. So we'll jump back into where we left off. Where do we get to, Nitish?
So yeah, the last time we were looking at this method here, we had done a bit of refactoring of the body, and then we had, at the end, we had renamed the method here. So let's just continue from there. So just as a brief recap, this used to be called display special commands. And then, you had this comment here that said prints the commands that are tile specific. So we just renamed that. Let's see where we can go from here. So diving straight in, one of the first things I see here, looking beyond this method a little bit, is this part here. So the last time we had extracted a few variables here to simplify a line that was quite similar or probably the same as this one over here.
So we've got the scribe tile method. Just from, because it's been a while since I've looked at the code, I can't remember. Does tile make sense to us from what we did beforehand? Do we know what a tile is?
It seems to make sense to me. So again, without knowing too much, but given that it's a role-playing game, there's a map, and I'd imagine the map is kind of like a grid, which is composed of tiles. So a player could be on any given tile on that 2-dimensional grid or map at any point.
Okay, so
So what this tells to me is describe the tile that the player is currently in or at.
Okay, and we've got a long first line, obviously. So just reading that, having never seen it before, tile is going to be the player which has a location, and then we're going to map that location, and we're going to. I'm not quite sure what calling the tiles on map. Is map? No, it's not the function map. It's the in the map as part of the business logic
of the game. Yeah.
So a player has a location, and that location has a map, and the map has a tile, and
a map has tiles,
and then we're going to access.
And then we try to access. So I imagine this is the X and Y coordinates, right? So we are trying to access the tile corresponding to the player's location.
Okay, and then once we've got that, so the X is the player location chords first, and then the Y is the player location chords second.
Second, yeah.
Okay, and then events is so we're finding that tile, and then we're calling events on the tile, and then we're storing that in events, and then the player, and we're printing a mini map.
Yeah.
And we're going to print to the the command line tile dot description, and then the display tile specific commands. I wonder what we're doing with the events, because it seems like we're creating a variable for it, but we're not. Does it look like we're using it?
Yeah, it doesn't look like, and you've got a hint there because it's grayed out over there, so the IT is telling you as well that it's unused. So I'm going to remove that assignment and see if things still continue to work. I think they will. There you go. Success.
Perfect. All right, cool. So,
yeah.
we got rid of one line quite easily.
Wasn't used, yeah. So how about we do the same thing as we did over here the last time, which is extract player.location to location. And now you can see this line, well, and then, well, again, chords to chords, and then you see this part here isn't any different from that part there.
Oh, even just that just makes it a lot easier to read, doesn't it?
Yeah. And the other thing this is telling us, by the way, is, so we've got location, which is the player's location. Then we navigate from location to the map to the tiles, and then try to look up based on the coordinates that we obtained from the location in the first place. So that's smelling like feature envy to me.
What's that?
So feature envy is basically the idea of one class being almost envious of the features of another class, right? So the solution, by the way, to that, or like that's the smell, and the solution to that typically is tell, don't ask, which is the idea of telling objects to do something as opposed to asking them for information. So in this case, what we are doing seems to be asking the location for a number of details. So its coordinates to begin with, then the map, and then the tiles, and then using the information that we had obtained from the location in the first place to further drill down into something specific from this other piece of information we obtained from the location, right? So we got tiles from the location and we got coordinates from the location, and then we are trying to put those two pieces of information together to derive the tile.
Okay.
Right. So instead of doing all of that in this world command class, why not just ask the location for the tile?
Okay, so the location would add, for example, a method onto it, and we tell that object what we want from it rather than going through this process of extracting different pieces.
Yeah.
So we'll have like a location. Location will have a method on it that says something like tiles.
Yeah.
And then, so we're extracting the logic and putting it into the location object, and we're going to tell that object what we want rather than what we're doing at the moment, which is more, was it showing it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, so let's try and do that. So over here, I'm going to try and extract a method. So again, just because this is the first time in this episode, I don't think I'll continue to do this every episode, but just to show you what I'm actually doing here. So refactor extract method, and I'm going to give, actually I think I'll extract these two lines. Hang on. Just to make it easier for the IDE to detect duplication across those two methods, I'm going to do another extract variable here. So quite similar to what I just showed with the method, but instead of extracting a method, I'm going to extract a variable first. And that is tile in this case. Yeah, I think so. Right, and then events is tile.events. In this case, I might even inline it. Right, and yeah, so those two lines are now exactly copies of each other. Right, so I'm going to extract a method. Let's call it tile. The tile at that location.
Okay, so we've now got a new method, and that method is tile. We pass it a location, and then it will return to us the tile at that location.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Right, so extract, and of course the IDE has detected that there's another occurrence of it, so I'm going to replace all of them. Right, so still passes. Now I can inline that variable as well. Inline over here too. Well, just to be clear again what I'm doing. So I'm going to go refactor inline. So that gets rid of the variable, replaces the variable with the right hand side of it.
So where has that gone to? I've kind of missed that. Oh, okay, so it's right. So it's gone into the print. So we're using it in the actual print. We're calling the method directly from there.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. And if you're using RubyMine, I've not actually used this aspect. It's built into RubyMine. There's no plugins or anything. It's just
it's built into RubyMine.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you're using RubyMine, obviously maybe a good idea to check that out. If you're using a different IDE or you're not using and if you're using Sublime or Atom or something like that and you don't have access to this, then you don't need it. This is just something that makes it a little simpler, but it's also obviously possible just to do it manually as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for pointing that out because, yeah, I mean, although I'm using, of course, the IDE for the convenience that it provides, none of this is limited to an IDE or the IDE that I'm using anyway. So, yeah. So I'm going to inline another one here as well, by the way. Location, again, seems to be being used only in this one place, and that variable doesn't seem to add a lot. That doesn't seem too bad to me, although, well, you might argue otherwise because the line now looks a bit too long, maybe.
It's a long line. Let me see because I can't remember exactly what this one does either, so I'll try and comprehend it. So visible commands is the tile at the player's location. That makes perfect sense. And that tile has events, and then we're going to select the visible events from that tile, and we're going to map it with the
to the command for that.
To the command for it, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would argue we're on the line here. I think it could be argued either way. I'm happy with it personally.
Yeah. Okay. Same thing over here. Again, not much of a difference between location and player.location. So, what do you think? So what used to be tile location is now tile player.location.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Yeah.
So I think one thing you'll notice here is, by the way, right, so if you compare with what we had earlier, so earlier, to simplify things, we had extracted a number of variables, right? One, to understand what's going on, and because there was a lot going on over here, especially this line, right? So that's why those variables actually help clarify. But now that we've extracted that bulk of that logic into another method, we have less of a need for those temporary variables that we had extracted earlier. Right, so this is one thing I've noticed quite commonly. You know, the code will, as you are refactoring, the code will quite fluidly expand or contract in terms of the number of lines. And yeah, I tend to be quite sort of fluid about it. Extracting variables seem to be the right choice at that point. At this point, you know, given what we've just done, they don't seem to add much value.
Yeah, I do. And are we done with this method, or is this is there anything else we want to do with this one?
With this one, it looks like we are done, more or less. We might come back to it, but I think what I'd like to do is go to this method here. And remember, we had originally talked about tell don't ask, so moving this method to the tile.
Yep.
So let's do that. And over here you can see as well, by the way, just keep simplifying things so that variable wasn't required, variable assignment wasn't required because we are just returning that value anyway.
Yep, implicit return.
So that's one. Even over here you'll see maybe not much use of that that variable. So again, got rid of that. And in order to now move this method to the location class, I'll have to, now this is a thing that in a language like Java or such, my IDE would have been able to do for me, essentially the whole moving of this method to another class. in this case, given that we are in Ruby, I'll have to do it by hand. So just going to take that body of that method and replace it with what I imagine would be the name of the method in the class. So I've got the location, and so I'm just going to create a method called tile in location, put the body over there. So let's do that. And I'll explain why I'm doing it this way in a moment, but let's go to location, that one over there. And you can see it's a fairly simple class. It's got a map and coordinates. That's about it. We are going to add this new method to it, which is going to be called tile. And because I don't want to make too many changes at the same time, the earlier method from which we copied the body used to have location as a variable, which was essentially the method parameter.
Mm-hmm.
So in this case, I don't need the parameter because I'm inside the class itself. But because I want to restrict the changes, keep the code working, I'll come back to this and get rid of and simplify this a little bit further. But looking at this, let's see if things continue to work. They do.
Excellent.
And at this point, I will inline this method again. So once again, just showing refactor inline. And there's no more private methods, so I'm going to get rid of that. And let's look at what just happened there. So we used to have tile player.location. That's now changed to player.location.tile.description.
Perfect. So now we are asking the location for the tile.
Yeah.
And it's responding to it. And it makes it a lot, I would argue it's a lot easier to comprehend generally because it's more concise and clearer in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Cool. And if we go back to this, I will now inline location again. Mm-hmm. And then you'll realize, of course, in Ruby, you could use self, but don't need to. So get rid of that. And yeah, that's much simpler, isn't it?
Yeah, perfect. And tests are still passing, so
Yep.
we're still good.
I think just one more thing I had in mind. Yeah, so I think another thing I notice now is player.location.tile.
Mm.
So it seems like it might be worth having a method on player directly, which returns you the tile instead of location.tile.
Mm. Shall we? I would argue maybe
But
we could save that for the next one.
Yeah,
because I think that this tightly wraps up. We've made that a good work on that method, and then perhaps we could have a short video with us refactoring the player, or not refactoring the player, but adding the method similar to how we've done now. How does that sound?
Agree, sounds good.
All right, perfect. So we'll wrap up for this episode, and join us for the next one where we'll be diving into adding a method on player in a similar fashion to what we've done here with location.
Cool, thanks.